Hey, good morning. What a beautiful, beautiful June day it is here in the great state of Maine. The ancestral birthing grounds, as I like to call them. I was born here. What is it? I don't know. Oh, what am I? Doesn't matter. Anyway, what you're looking out over right now. Oh, you got a nice iris maybe in frame there. Show you that in a second. What we're looking out over is a beautiful acidic fen here. This nice little swampy grassland. Indeed, what I came through back that way, if you can make that out, was a nice little, red maple swamp. In fact, there's a red maple there. Had your alder, which you've got also right here, your Alnus species, your typical, coastal Maine situation. I was out here today hoping to show you a few different orchid species. Actually almost panicked because I found one specimen of one species looking very much worse for wear. Fortunately, I poked around a little bit longer. I found a very healthy population of at least the new to me species, which we'll get into in a second. But two of the species, just so you know, are not blooming right now. That's fine. This is a nice little preserve they've got set aside. Really nice. It's a beautifully maintained property on the edge of an old mostly disused farm. Anyway, Ocean is right over the hill, kind of behind us here. So this is an unusual spot in my mind to hunt for orchids. But as I will kind of get into, this is a pretty typical type of habitat for Maine. We're on some ancient, very, very old metasedimentary rock here. I'm guessing the substrate, based on the species in question, is acidic, and based on the fact that you've got rhododendrons, you've got your kalmia, you've got your red maple and alders. You got all these species. Well, alders can go either way. You got all these acid-loving species. So anyway, I'll quit yapping, and we'll get into it right now. Okay, here you go. Here's why, pretty much the predominant reason I came out here. This is Arethusa bulbosa. And just sit tight for a second. Buckle in. We're going to talk for a second here. We're going to talk about this lovely species of orchid, a little bit about its taxonomy, a little bit about its, what it's doing here, and a little bit about its natural history, and of course the anatomy. So, this is Arethusa bulbosa, beautiful, beautiful species of orchid, an epidendroid. So it's in the subfamily Epidendroideae. So you can see that beautiful labellum down below. It's quite striking. You get your two petals up top here. And then, oh no, my mistake. Oh no, that's your column. So, okay, so here's your labellum below. Petal 1, petal 2. These are your lateral petals. Underneath there, that's your column, which is, your reproductive structure with your pollinia, your stigma, what have you. I think this guy's missing. Oh no, is this guy missing a sepal? I think this guy's missing a sepal. Huh. Not sure what's going on there with the sepals. I'll figure it out at a later time. Oh, I see. Okay. So look at the one next to it. Labellum is petal 1. 2 lateral petals up top. There's the 3 sepals. This one's missing a sepal on the left there. Anyway, your basic orchid anatomy. The only leaf on the thing is just a tiny little, probably can't even see it. It's got this tiny little grass blade-like leaf. As many of its close relatives, of which one grows here, I can't show it to you, but this is in a tribe known as the Arethusae tribe, Arethusae, whatever it is. So it's closely related to Calopogon tuberosus, which also grows here and exemplifies a, strikingly similar appearance in some ways to it, although this is not resupinate like Calopogon tuberosus is. Only a few of them around, not a terribly super common orchid here or anywhere really. I guess Maine is one of the most robust states to find it in, but even then it's not exactly common or widespread. A handful of sites scattered around elsewhere in New England. But the Maine coast seems to be kind of its stronghold, and Nova Scotia as well seems to be a rather stronghold for it. It's endemic to the northeast, so you get it in New England, but not really far down Appalachia, which is not an uncommon distribution for a lot of other species of not just orchid but plants in general. I guess you get it out towards the Great Lakes a bit, but realistically you're not talking about a widespread species as far as orchids go. Quite a few orchids can be locally rare but widespread. This one is basically, I'll put the range map up, of course, basically restricted to the Northeast. So it's got like almost like a jewel-like appearance to it, looking back at it from up here where I'm standing now. I mean, just an absolutely striking and beautiful orchid, and an absolutely striking and amazing habitat. We'll get into the habitat too. I'll have to come back just to be polite. I'll get you shots of the two other species. This might still be blooming if I come back to these can bloom for quite a while, but the unfortunately Calopogon tuberosus, which grows here, and Pogonia ophioglossoides, which I'm surprised isn't blooming, tend to do their thing a little bit later in the season. But I digress. Don't have to get too far into that now. We can come back and put that at the end of the video. Something I've grown fond of doing this year. So historically, this was not a super rare species, but the systematic, quote-unquote reclaiming and deterioration of its habitat, these sort of fens, acidic fens, have really done a number on it, and it just doesn't seem to come back. Pogonia ophioglossoides and Calopogon tuberosus enjoy a similar habitat. In fact, this is reminding me in some ways a lot of a bog I like to hang out in New Hampshire, which has Calopogon tuberosus growing prolifically within it, as well as pitcher plants, which I have not seen here. But not this species. I think it was, dozens of locations were known in Massachusetts at one point, and the vast majority of which are now just, destroyed. So, doing well for the time being up here in Maine, it seems, thank goodness, and just needs, oh God, I got ticks all over me, man. That's not surprising. Doing well here in Maine, or doing well enough here in Maine for the time being. Who knows for how long. Fortunately, this is a protected and well-known location for it. But you got to protect these grasslands, these quote-unquote wastelands that just accumulate water. And let's talk about that for a second. So this habitat type here, you could definitely call this a fen. There's no body of water here, but the soil stays relatively waterlogged. There's no real outlet here. It just kind of accumulates this acidic, nutrient poor soil here. Not unlike a bog, but again, there's no open water. There's no mat of peat here. This is just acidic, waterlogged, nutrient poor soil for the most part, kind of like a grassland. So that's the preferred habitat. God, the bugs here, now they're waking up. I got horseflies on me. I got ticks on me. What's going on? Oh, that's what you get for wandering around looking at plants. Yeah, that's fair, but also, I'm not delicious. I don't know why they want me. I'm full of energy drinks and all manner of unhealthy things. I digress. So you get these communities that, a lot of plants, they're fulfilling a niche, or they have some trick to survive. Orchids like this stuff because orchids can't really take a lot of competition. They're kind of highly specialized to, maybe one or two habitat types. You get a lot of endemism in orchids. This is a lot of speciality. Has a lot to do with their relationship with special fungus in the soil. And they can just generally tolerate the stuff that a lot of other plants can do. Nothing here, save for a couple species of fern, really attain much height. You got carnivorous plants here, I'll show you in a second, and we'll take a look at the broader community. So, I could talk all day about this beauty, but we'll come back probably in a week or two, probably closer to 2 weeks. We'll see what's going on. But let's talk about, some of the other real interesting species you've got growing here, because indeed there are a number of very interesting species growing here. Arethusa, bulbosa, dragonmouth. I think it's kind of potentially easy to see how it gets that name. These horseflies are going to be the death of me, I swear. But hopefully you enjoyed that, and that I held the camera in focus enough, despite me frantically swatting at insects. Anyway, we'll leave this beauty for now. Two of them here. One right there doesn't look like it's doing so hot. I got one behind me, and then I saw one alongside a different part of the trail that looked pretty worse for wear. So we'll leave this lovely species of orchid to its own devices for now. Arethusa, bulbosa, everybody. What a beautiful, beautiful specimen there. So as I was explaining, everybody's got to have a gimmick, you know, to survive in this type of habitat. This guy right here, we talked about before, this is Commandra umbellata. This is the bastard toadflax. This is a hemiparasite. So this plant's doing a little bit of photosynthesis, doing a little bit of stealing from its neighbors, and he's getting by in that way. Just kind of, I mean, I see this in some pretty dry communities, but I guess it doesn't mind the wet communities, like a nice sandy grass plain. You'll see a ton of this guy. Real cool plant. Don't need to go, I guess, further in depth than that for right now. I think this gets bounced around taxonomically. Depends on who you ask. Some people put it in its own family. Some people, you know, put it in the mistletoe family, Betulaceae, and then others, I don't know. I don't know historically what other families it's belonged to. Or definitely not Laurenthaceae, but whatever. You get the idea. Hemiparasite, that's its gimmick to kind of hack it in this type of community. And that's his story, and he's sticking to it. So again, drawing comparisons to one of my favorite places in New Hampshire, you get this up there too. This guy is already on his way out though. This is Aronia melanocarpa. This is one of the black chokeberries, or is the black chokeberry. Really cool member of the rose family. Makes fruits that are technically edible, but as the name implies, unpalatable unless you put them in a jam. And this guy's probably also making use of some interesting mycorrhizal associations. He's working with the fungus are working with him, and that's how he gets by in this type of community. Here, they're real short, although I guess this one I just noticed because it's just in bloom. I'm looking behind me now. There's a few taller ones, but they don't get not as big as the ones in the bog closer to me. Still relatively small buggers, but there you go. That's a beautiful, you know, like I said, on his way out, but still a real beautiful, real interesting member of this type of community. Yeah, I've been on one with these guys lately. This is Osmunda regalis. This is the royal fern, and I got a whole episode coming out just about this family. This one's further behind than the ones down where we live. So this one is, you know, still got the green sporophylls there. So that's, you know, those fronds, their principal job is not, you know, photosynthesizing. Their principal job is to make and spread spores. These guys can take it in a variety of habitats, but they're real cool because I'm just like, dang, that's a fern that just does its thing right out in the open, huh? That's interesting. I'll show you in a second, but you got Osmundastrum cinnamomeum here too, one of its close relatives. Oh yeah, right behind it. Oh no, that's I can't tell what that guy is, but right there, see these guys right here? That's Osmundastrum cinnamomeum, same family. Oh, here we go. Same family as the Osmunda regalis there. These guys got their spores out already though, as you can see. Real interesting fern. Just go back, and I'm going to do a whole video about that whole family, so go back and watch that. Ancient lineage, the most ancient known lineage of what we call now leptosporangiate ferns, which I won't get into all that right now, but you get the idea. It's the type of alder. Alnus is the species, Betulaceae is the family. These guys love it up here in Maine. You know, like swamps, real good. Sometimes you go far enough north, this would be the only hardwood, you know, growing in some of those Thuya occidentalis balsam fir swamps. So it'd be the only hardwood just hanging out in the understory. Although here, as you can see, it's one of the few things attaining any realistic height here in the fen. So cool species. I'm gonna guess Alnus incana. I don't really know. Your evidence that this is in the order Phagales right there. It's bearing its flowers on little catkins. Those are the reproductive structures there. I don't know much about alder specifically, even though I love, you know, Betulaceae. I think it's an underrated family. Alders, hazels, birches, hornbeams, some cool plants in there. What else can I show you? I'm already standing up. I try not to, I've been trying to avoid filming videos like this, but you know, whatever, if it gets the point across. Here's when you gotta know. I was racking my brain trying to figure out exactly what this was. I thought it was some type of rhododendron, and then I'm like, but that doesn't make any sense. I'd see the fruits on the damn thing. I'd know exactly what it is. And then I looked underneath. Also, in the order Phagales, catkins, baby. Catkins are your giveaway. This is Myricaceae. This is one of the wax myrtles. So same family as a couple of my favorite plants like Myricaceae pensylvanica, bayberry, and Comptonia peregrina, the sweet fern. God, I wish I could remember what the common name is here, but whatever, doesn't really matter. Myricaceae, again, a fen dweller, a coastal. Well, I guess you get this inland. You get this pretty widespread species, actually, now that I'm thinking about it. I've never stopped to actually talk about this one. Just in a weird, small little family there. But, I mean, every plant, we get 3 of them. Myricaceae, Myricaceae pensylvanica, and then Comptonia peregrina. And, in fact, I think they moved Myricaceae pensylvanica into a different genus. I digress. Wax myrtles, bayberries. You get the idea. A lot of them smell good. Does this one exude any sort of pleasant smelling compound? Ooh, it does. Oh, it smells exactly like Comptonia peregrina does when you rub up against that, or like what the little bayberry wax smells like. They use Myricaceae pensylvanica to make candle wax, so that's interesting. And it's the beachy scent, you know. Some manner of ericaceous plant. I don't think it's a huckleberry. So I'll have to put this one into INAT. Definitely Ericaceae, something like a huckleberry or a huckleberry like Leonia or Galassacea. I can't tell you offhand right now. I'll put it down below. It's not blooming. Those are the flowers from. Those are the fruits from last year, and these are the flowers ready to go for this year, which is kind of my evidence that it's you know. A huckleberry, one of the Leonias. So is a rare one. I'm not counting on it being one of the rare ones. It doesn't look like Leonia ligustrina though, like a normal maleberry or huckleberry as they call it. I can't really tell you. And then also, they're starting to bloom, but they're, you know, a dime a dozen. I don't need to spend too much time on this. What forms a large portion of the understory here. Great plant, don't get me wrong. One of my favorites is the species of Kalmia. This is Kalmia angustifolia. Surprised that there's no Kalmia polifolia here, but I'll be honest with you, I don't think it's wet enough for Kalmia polifolia to grow here. Beautiful little pink sonar dish flowers on the thing when it blooms. I've got more than enough pictures to be able to show you that if you're curious, which I will. I happily will. But yeah. Just that's kind of what's forming. That and that Commandra, the toadflax, are kind of what's forming a decent amount of the thicket here. Which actually, now that I'm thinking about it, that is interesting to me, because if you were to go to a bog, you'd probably be looking at what's it called? Oh God, Chamaedaphne colliculata being your predominant, you know, green thing growing. But no, you know, you get the Myrica and the Alnus forming kind of what passes for a shrub layer. You got ferns kind of in between that. You get some encroachment from these red maples too. That's, you know, all this tree. You walk out of the swamp, that's what's growing back in there. However, this is kind of where the water pools up, because there's a little creek running through the woods here, and this is kind of where it stops. At least that's what it seems like to me. But you get the red maples, the dominant overstory tree, over in there. All sorts of interesting sedges growing. More of that mysterious ericaceous plant right there. Gonna have to figure that one out for you, sorry. Oh, yeah, you get some of these Kalmia are blooming. Yeah, there you go. Kalmia angustifolia, that's what those look like. Nice plant, don't get me wrong. Just a very, very common plant. It'll grow in all sorts of different, you know, difficult to growing conditions. Its only stipulation that it asks for is basically just full sun. Take sandy soil, nutrient poor, full sun. He's a specialist in that, you know. Which, I mean, is a common theme for quite a number of these species. Here's the Arethusa I saw first, and I got really, really bummed for a second, but luckily we found more. Some Sisyrinchium, closed up, and where is it? Here we go. Can't really see this through the shrub layer, but here's your, you know, adaptations. There's your Drosera rotundifolia there. Guess what his adaptation is? Yep, you guessed it. That's right. He's a carnivorous plant. Looks like you've got a. So you get this Drosera here. Drosera rotundifolia. You know, if you don't know what this plant does, it's employing sticky glands, and similar to a Venus flytrap, to which it's related. It, you know, an insect will land on those glands, and the Drosera will, you know, wrap around it, digest it, do that whole thing, and that's how it's dealing with the, you know, lack of nutrients here. You also have, much to my surprise, if you can even really make it out, if I can even really make it out and find it, there's some cranberry in here too. Yeah, close-ups in the Drosera. I swear to God, I saw cranberry. Hang on, we'll figure this out. Isn't that embarrassing? Oh, I'm a little low, that's why. Ah, there he is. See that right there? Little vaccinium, probably oxycocos, bog cranberry, maybe macrocarpon, you know? That's probably what destroyed a lot of Arethusa's original habitat, I'll be honest with you. Cranberry bogs. Not that, yeah, that makes sense. That's clicking for me just this second, and it should have clicked a while before. Oh well. So you get your carnivory, you get your orchids. Yeah, I mean, it's everything I want in a habitat. Carnivorous plants, orchids, niche specialists to poor growing conditions. I love all that stuff. That's my bread and butter, man. You know, why orchids? I ask myself that all the time. I just think they're neat. Put little Marge Simpson in there. I just think they're neat, you know? Carnivorous plants, I get it too, but I mean, probably fewer carnivorous plants than there are orchids in New England, you know, but whatever. I think we're getting pretty close to wrapping up here. What I think I'll end up doing is we might cut it off here. That's a ton of content. We'll come back, we'll do a little walk through the swamp, although there's nothing really interesting going on back there. It's the same fern species I just showed you, and then just bigger maples and alders, and then of course you get that Myrica is kind of interspersed in there too. Come back, show you the other two species of orchid here. I want to compare and contrast, especially Calopogon tuberosus with Arethusa bulbosa, because they are in the same tribe. They are very closely related. And then, you know, Pogonia ophioglossoides will be here too, but that's in a completely different subfamily. Got some superficial resemblance. So we'll say goodbye to the Drosera. We'll take a walk down over to the beach. We'll see what's going on, and then we'll head over to spot numero 2 for the day. Anyway, take it easy. I'll check back in with you, hopefully when we're looking at some Pogonia and some Grasspink is the common name for Calopogon. Lots of turkeys hanging out around here. Love a good turkey. Look at this gal. Are you looking at me or are you looking away from me? Oh, you were looking away from me. Now you're looking at me. I love turkeys so much. She's small. Just a little turkey. Hey, okay, here we are, maybe a month later, back in the great state of Maine, hanging out in this nice coastal fen. You can smell the salt on the air and really, you know, hear the ocean right behind us. But anyway, just coming back just to retouch base on a couple of interesting species, a few that weren't, you know, in bloom here when we were here last year. I'll figure out a sensible way to chop all this up, because this could end up being a lot of information with the previous video and then this one, but I digress. So we're in the fen. I should have already explained to you what's going on with that. Specifically, we were here to check out a really cool species of orchid, one that is rapidly, rapidly kind of losing ground, losing its populations. Arethusa bulbosa. That species has since wrapped up. That blooms back in mid-May. It's now the end of June, Actually, I wasn't here last month. I was here at the very beginning of this month. I digress. Whatever. It doesn't really matter. You get the idea. About a month or so ago, at an undisclosed amount of time in the past, we were here looking at Arethusa bulbosa. So this plant in front of us right now is actually a very close relative of Arethusa bulbosa. These guys actually share a tribe, or maybe even a sub-tribe, within the orchid subfamily Epidendroideae. Okay, so those are predominantly, if we're going by the global standard, epiphytic orchids, grew on trees, real showy, real, I guess what you would imagine when you think of an orchid. Calopogon tuberosus, however, is actually, despite its beautiful and somewhat exotic appearance, not a terribly rare orchid in the Northeast in the grand scheme of things. Actually, one of the more common and showy ones. Doesn't need to be growing in a coastal habitat. This does, I mean, I got a good spot for it in southern New Hampshire. There's a nice little bog I go to all the time that's got it. But yeah, it is a close relative. Arethusae, I think, is the tribe or subtribe name there. So named for Arethusa, but containing this species. And there's a number of Calopogon species that occur up and down the east coast of the U.S., maybe elsewhere too. But this is the only one we get up here in New England. I covered this in a really cool video I did a while ago about carnivorous plants. And I just, like to explain with this one, you can't really see much of the morphology because he's kind of coming out of the brush back here, but the leaf on this is basically just a grass blade, which is where it gets its common name, Tuberous Grasspink, a nice tuberous root, nice grass-like leaf. And again, he's just another one that's making the best out of shitty growing conditions that you get here in the fen. One last really interesting thing about this one in particular, though, is just you notice something a little bit off about this compared to most orchids. This is actually upside down. Well, it's a right side up. So you have your column down below, which would usually be up top. Here are your two lateral petals. And here is your labellum. You will take note that labellum is completely hinged. And that is because these calli here that it has are basically to entice a pollinator into thinking if there's some pollen or some other reward up top. This is the labellum. That is typically the bottom showy petal of an orchid, typically the most highly modified one. And that's just the little mechanical spring trap that it has. 3 nice pink sepals, somewhat unremarkable. A lot of these are kind of almost, dare I say, on their way out, but there's still a few in bud. So we're kind of right, in the middle of the end. Actually, I'm looking out now, there's still quite a few in bud. As always, once your eyes, get adjusted, you tend to see a bit more. Quite a stately orchid, very beautiful one, coming up with an extremely stunted Lysomachia terrestris, another, specialist in these acidic, shitty habitats, growing barely 3 inches tall here. When we were walking back through the swamp that kind of surrounds this in the shade, these guys were easily getting to be 2 feet tall. So you see how these conditions affect even plants that don't necessarily need this type of habitat to be in. I'll also just take a moment to show you this because he's one of my favorite guys. You get your Leonia ligustrina, your he huckleberry, little woody fruits on it. He's in full bloom now, sporting little ericaceous, those little ericaceous, yes, but ursulate, the specific term, corollas. As always, we've got our Drosera in bud there. And yeah, see, here's another one of those. This guy's just getting started. So these a lot of orchids look really cool. He's gonna send up probably, there's one flower. There's the second one. It looks like something happened with this column there on the bottom. So these Arethusa bulbosa is resupinate. That just means rotated 180 degrees. All right, this is technically the bottom. This is technically the top petal on most flowers, but again, most orchids this would be considered upside down. I don't make the rules. I'm just explaining to you why this is kind of a weirdo. There's one grass pink, or I'm sorry, not grass pink. There's another one we're going to talk about. I just have a better specimen that I can get my camera right up to a little bit further down. We're going to go look at, and then we're going to get out of here because I got a real bad mosquito and tick problem here. I'll also issue a correction. This plant here, I might have erroneously referred to as Myricaceae. This is Morella pensylvanica. This is the bayberry. So Myricaceae is a really close related species. Yeah, these were flowers last time we were here. Now it's forming the little waxy fruits. You know, I'm only ever used to seeing this in the fall when it has the fruits out and the difference is a little bit more apparent. And again, this is another one that just loves the you know, shitty soil, acidic soil, does well in the sand, does well in the beaches. And then just I'll give you a nice panorama shot of the fen. Maybe you can hear a little bit of that ocean in the background. The entire swath through here, I can see it is just teeming with orchids. So go look at Pogonia ophioglossoides. That's just another one we've seen before. But you know, you've got 3 really cool, really beautiful pink orchids all bloom in this habitat. All, I guess 2 of them at the same time, one of them a little bit later. Allegedly, they've got Drosera here too, which would probably be growing up more in there. I'm not going to get into all that right now because that wouldn't be blooming now anyway. But let's go take a look at this Pogonia ophioglossoides. We'll get out of here. Okay, and then here's our last guy, actually growing almost back into the woods. This is another one we covered before. This is Pogonia ophioglossoides. It gets that epithet ophioglossoides, ophioglossum oides, you know, resembling an ophioglossum, which is a type of fern, colloquially known as an adder's tongue. Can I get in there? You can focus on the leaf, please. There you go. So if you were dealing with an adder's tongue, the actual fern, which is much more rare than this plant, at least up here, you have a nice little stack of spores here in just the one leaf. However, this is not a fern. This is an orchid. Specifically, it is a vanilloid orchid, one of 3. I've finally seen all 3 of them. This one being by far the most common of the 3, and the Isotree verticillata being somewhat less common. And then, you know, Isotree meduloides, you just go watch that video. That's going to be a really interesting video. But this one is actually showier than, I don't know about verticillata, but it's pink. The other ones have green flowers. This one has pink flowers, and indeed, this is a vanilla. It is in the Vanilloideae subfamily of orchids. It is the 2nd most basal family. Only the Apostacioideae orchids, which you're not going to get anywhere near North America. Only northeastern Australia and like the, you know, Oceania, you get them. I think you get one in Japan too, maybe Taiwan, but whatever. The Vanilloideae, specifically the Pogoniae tribe, is what this guy finds himself in. And I just always kind of comment on the fact that it does have, despite being beautiful, nice little bract there, kind of cattywampus. Oh, 2 bracts. I guess they, actually no, I have seen them do that before. Get those beautiful, I'll really zoom in there for you. Oh, I cut the camera off there while trying to do the auto zoom, something I vowed to not do much of. Get these beautiful cali, you know, leading up to the column. So you see how the column's on the top this time? This is a resupinate orchid, like most of them are. But in the grand scheme of things, the flower morphology here, it's not really doing anything that crazy. You know, you can see, you know, you get your bottom petal, column back there, 2 lateral petals up top, and then 3 normal looking sepals, ovary behind, and kind of this weird askew bract, you know, kind of subtending the ovary, but whatever. You get it. An acid-loving, a fen-loving orchid does fine here on the seacoast. You hear about the Back Bay fens in Boston. You know, that probably looked somewhat similar to this. That stream was probably, if you've ever been to the Back Bay fens, that stream that runs through there was probably a wooded swamp. And then the little park grassland was probably, you know, leached out acidic coastal fen just like this. Almost certainly, and I think you can even pull herbarium records to back this up, you probably had Arethusa bulbosa growing there. Just, you know, the emerald necklace was certainly an improvement on, you know, cities, and is certainly a step up from what a lot of cities are, but at the end of the day, no real replacing the lovely coastal fen habit. Anyway, this is just an addendum. I could do a whole 20-minute video on just these 2 species, how they're interesting taxonomically, well, how this one in particular is interesting taxonomically, and then how the Arethusa, sorry, not the Arethusa, the Calopogon is interesting morphologically with its weird non-resupinate flower and its hinged labellum doing a little pollinator spring trap there. I got another video up about that, and I got a video up about rose Pogonia. You can go check those out. I go a little bit more in depth, but I felt like it would be a little bit of a cock tease if I didn't, you know, show you that there are in fact 3 beautiful orchids that grow here. Technically 5, because you get lady slippers on the premises too. Nothing to do with the fen habitat, and you get Drosera as well, which and not really a fen dweller, more of like a wet grassland, different habitat, much bigger species. In any case, we're getting eaten alive here, coming back from an anime convention. You know, it was a real rush. Everybody was trying to come from the anime convention to come see the orchids, but you know, I wish. You get some nice furries on the boardwalk would be cool, would really kind of lighten the vibe up. It gets kind of stiff. This is like a conservation land, but in any case, they'd be safe from hunting here. They wouldn't have to worry about it. I didn't see the turkeys. I got my partner with me. I figured I would show them the turkeys, but they weren't here, so we'll cut it off there, and we'll wish you folks a fine July, because tomorrow's the first day of July, which not looking forward to. So take it easy. Just real quick, one last thing, just to explain my point. So there is Lysimachia terrestis as it's growing back here in the swampier forest area. You know, it's a good solid 1.5 foot tall. The thing was barely ascending to 3 inches, just because even though it can hack it over there, and it was getting much more sunlight, it's the soil or the substrate causing it to become, you know, stunted in such a way. Also, you get a nice skullcap back there, Scutellaria. I'm finally going to pronounce it right, you jackasses. Scutellaria. I forget the species epithet, but it's a marsh skullcap. Anyway, I'm really getting eaten alive, so we're going to cut this off, and just wanted to explain my point there. Take it easy. Okay, so now this is why I never, you know, stop these videos early, because we got a real interesting species of pea here too, in addition to the orchids and the coastal fen and whatnot. We're right in the back of a brackish marsh here. Get up and show you that. We'll close out on that. But this is Lathyrus japonicus. This is the beach pea, or, you know, goes by a few different names, beach vetchling, whatever. It is a vetch. It is in that, you know, clade or tribe of, you know, Fabiae, I think is the tribe. I brushed up on my legumes last year, but whatever. That's not why we're here, but this is a cool plant. So this is native to various seemingly random coastal points around the world. I don't know if it's native to, but it certainly grows around the shores of the Great Lakes too. You get this on the Pacific coast, you get this on the Atlantic coast, basically anywhere temperate with access to the ocean, you can get this plant growing. Obviously, as the epithet suggests, it grows in Japan as well as here on the Atlantic coast in New England, and must, I can only presume, have some measure of a necessity to have salt in the soil. Grows in the backs of dunes, or maybe the seeds float on the water. Coconut, you know, is a famous example of that. Coca nucifera, Cocos nucifera, whatever the scientific name of coconut is, does that, and so you get coconut growing in obviously tropical regions with suitable habitat around the world too. Quite a number of species can do that. It's just real interesting. I never really thought about that until we looked at this one. You can see he's got the compound leaves, as you would expect from a fabid, trailing tendrils grabbing onto everything, and there are those beautiful papilionaceous pea flowers for you as well. I love the two-tone thing going on. That's a cool plant. Fascinating life story with it too. Yeah, there's it kind of fighting with this honeysuckle that's everywhere. And there's that brackish marsh. Look, I'm captivated by another pea, distracted on my way back to the car. This is our native lupine here, which is doing pretty bad due to habitat loss. This is a Lupinus perennis, the sundial lupine. You know, you're from New England. A lot of people really worship Lupinus polyphilus, which is the greater lupine, which is a Pacific Coast species. It gets kind of problematic out here, actually. But this one, sure enough, going off the leaflets there, that's Lupinus perennis. You know, easy to grow, very easy to grow. The issue isn't that it, you know, is a super demanding plant with a ton of requirements. It just needs like an open, you know, that comes up after a fire maybe, like the sand plain type of stuff. You just got to, you know, you just kind of got to make some space for it. Nice pods. easily from seed. This is a great one to have just in your garden.